game's title, he effed the girl out of me. Sorry, Taylor. We don't want to get flagged for anything on Twitch, but this game is an extremely powerful kind of like autobiographical piece about Taylor's experience, like basically transitioning, and I'm trying to like find like the right way to like kind of explain the game. But really, it's kind of like a memoir. It's something that she felt like she really kind of like had to make in order to overcome various like traumas that she's experienced while transitioning, and to put it into a game and like to kind of like go through every detail, every like bits of the story of what she was going through. To her, like we were chatting about it before, and like I have her artist statement. She really felt it was important to put the story out into the world, to kind of like give, and like I'm stumbling because like I don't want to put any kind of like words into this because it's such a nuanced feeling for her. So I'm trying to be very careful not to, to assume or like fill in any gaps that I might not have. But it's definitely like an extremely powerful game. I remember when I first played it, it was kind of one of those games where like I felt closer to the author because it was such a raw story about basically our main character is trying to get some extra money for hormone treatment, and has a friend who is works as a sex worker, and goes along with her to kind of be like, all right, we can like try this out, see if you like it, and then starts getting into it. But as the title suggests, certain things kind of come out of it, and it's the story of that that journey, and then also how she like then overcame the trauma by like talking about it. And there's a lot of like really beautiful prose on kind of like how she was feeling during the time, and like various bits of like conversations that she's had with other people. Excuse me. And like in such a very like simplistic art style, and like as you can see, the main character is like this kind of like cute, almost cartoony ghost, to kind of like help alleviate like certain aspects of like how heavy the story is. And I think like, maybe it could have come from like something maybe tongue in cheek, or like that's just kind of like a little avatar that she really likes. But yeah, just to kind of like bring forth like all these ideas, her experiences throughout this whole journey.
And it's fascinating to have a game that actually deals with trauma. So many games use trauma as a motivating force. I mean, every role-playing game, your family's been killed, you need to save the earth. I just remember playing Icewind Dale long ago, and it was like the millionth time my family had been killed, and I had to save the universe. So my entire ability to deal with this trauma of my parents being killed is, well, save the earth and everyone will be happy.
Yeah, so, and it like it does a good job at like letting the game be like the main source of like the process, to process these experiences and these feelings.
Yeah, I'm also loving the representational art so far. Like you said it's a ghost. I thought of it as a little bird, an innocent bird moving on through. And the artwork itself, for the people encountered along the way, has been fascinating because that could be erotic content, but there's been nothing erotic about it so far. You're definitely feeling the building of the experience this person had. Brooke, I'd love your thoughts on the art of this.
I agree that there's definitely a dissonance between the simple representation and the very personal and traumatic story that's being retold.
Yeah,
We're
and
getting into the depths of it now.
yeah, and I also think that it's like the accessibility of like this kind of like art style, the very it's not like 1-bit, sorry. It like oh, someone help me out here. Like the 8-bit like aesthetic of like style really helps. And like Brooke, because I know you also do a lot of development and like this kind of style, but would you agree that like it's easy to like iterate on? I mean, quote unquote easy to iterate on like anything that is a game, but it helps the accessibility of like, I have an idea, I want to, you know, make that into a game, and without being like, oh well, I have to, you know, do lighting, do shaders. It's very simplistic, and it's not trying to like lift up you know, visuals in a way that you see in like the games industry.
Say it is easy to iterate upon to a point. When you get to like more detailed depictions, like the image we had a little bit ago that was full screen, that gets more involved than this little sprite work. I think that it does still elevate kind of the art, because it's a way to have a very more personal touch to it. You can see every single pixel. You can see the work that it went into it, versus like a lot of photorealistic stuff that just convinces you that it's just there. It's harder to see like the work or the human touch that went into it.
Yeah, and it's a good point of like, especially with like this style, every bit is, you know, so intentional. So every single frame is placed because that's what, you know, Taylor decided what she wanted to do with, like, even on this screen that you have right here, like just the light orange kind of coming down, and to be like, well, you know, other AAA games can be like, well, yeah, just add reflection on it. But like to actually go in and be like that pixel, that one, and then to create it from there.
This palette, I think, has like 6 colors in it, maybe, but it's still very evocative.
Yeah.
This is why I love having developers have these conversations. You get the insights you don't get just from folks who haven't been deep in the weeds on it. And it's fun with the art because when we see art like this, we expect 8-bit music behind it, happy, jolly, and not this raw commentary that's being written underneath it. So I really love how it flips the convention of the industry on its head. Like right here, I expect a fun little maze game to be happening, but that's absolutely not what's going on.
Yeah, it's more like subverting the expectations, like you say. That's like, oh, well, we know something like this very top down, and you got like various obstacles in the way. Like, okay, it's a maze, but this one's kind of more like we're going forward, and metaphorically, I'm being presented with 2 doors. Both of them disappear, you know, and it's kind of like it's the idea of a maze going thematically of like this is the maze that I'm going through while like trying to decide whether or not to make this game.
And what's extra funny is as a game dev, we use mazes to keep the players within areas we want them to go. And that wasn't the case there because you were not able to go through those doors or anything. It was to really illustrate the financial and family situations that the developer was having. We had another great question from Marcy Pritchett on YouTube. Do you think it's a metaphor for how the dev feels she has to repackage her story for some people's consumption?
Absolutely do think that. There's a lot of like tiptoeing around kind of like what happened because you don't know how people might react. That was some of the conversations at the start were very on the nose about that, about not knowing how other people would react, and you might feel betrayed, or they might betray you, or unpredictable, and it's a very tough topic to deal with.
Yeah, Marcy, if you have more questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. It's interesting that instead of a health bar, we have a whole commentary on the health industry and the health insurance industry as well.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up Taylor's artist statement right now so I can talk through it, because it definitely helps. Like, you know, you can get what you can out of like a playthrough, and you know, one of the amazing things about any kind of art form and medium is like what you take away from it, but also to hear an artist's intention on that just kind of like adds an extra layer of like things to look out for, things for themes that like she might be wanting to put in this game. And I'll read the artist statement here. It's the pain from the shame I had was so strong that it made me suicidal. The way to overcome shame is to talk to people about it, but the fear was so overpowering that I just couldn't. It froze me. So I was pinned between two things, the fear and shame. I wanted the pain to stop at any cost. Instead of suicide, I made a machine to explain all the things I was afraid to say. So this is what you have in front of you. Making this game was an act of self-destruction and an attempt to survive at any cost. It was petty and desperate, but I wanted to F things up so badly that I'd never be able to go back into hiding again. So that's just a testament to like really the courage that it takes to take a story that you feel you need to like process and to share it out into the world. And in some of my conversations with Taylor, she was very, very adamant about like, you know, there were a couple other games like throughout the years that kind of like helped her to like overcome certain fears and to be like, oh, look, like someone else is making a game that's diving into various like personal traumas that the developer might have gone through. This maybe could be something useful and like something that definitely helps. And like my partner Molly is an art therapist, and we've talked about this game and like many other games just, you know, during our like downtime, and she's very adamant on like, yeah, like in order, like things that can help process various traumas or like certain emotions or things that you're trying to get through is to like externalize it. And what that does is it kind of helps you to solidify it in a way that's, I don't want to say like distanced from yourself, but like you're thinking about it intentionally, and like how you think about it like while you're going through that. It's almost like a grief. Like if you've ever lost a loved one, you can either like, you know, bury it away and kind of like try not to think about it, but that's going to end up like bubbling up. So the pain of like coming out and talking about things might be extreme and like might even feel crippling almost. But every time you do it, you chip away at basically the thing that you you don't want to like talk about anymore. But like by talking about it, it helps you kind of like come to peace with it.
Yeah, fascinating. And it's really interesting because another way it flips the conventions on its heads are in classic games. When you change into another form, you get more powerful. It is about becoming more capable of overcoming obstacles, trashing your enemies, Transformers style, classic example. But this is very much about becoming more who you want to be rather than someone who can crush your enemies and see them wail before you. So I just love how it's taking a basic idea in games, changing your form, and setting it up in a different way than we're used to in commercial games. All right, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I'd love to see another game. So, Brook, really appreciate it. Before we change it over to Eric streaming a game, any last thoughts on this one?
No, I'm just engrossed in it, in the story. But this is probably a good stopping point. This is where it's gonna hit harder.
Okay.
But it's a very touching, very personal story. So I'd recommend everyone checking it out, either on their own or at the Avant Beetle. When is that?
Yeah, so it's going to be July 26th through 28th. And funny enough, regarding this game, I'm going to be holding a raffle because Taylor gave me 2 Game Boy cartridges. So she ported the game to a cartridge, and if you donate extra money to it, you can be entered in a raffle and like own a physical copy of this game that you can play on a Game Boy if you wanted.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's super impressed by it.
Brook, really appreciate you showing this game off. And if you haven't checked out Brook's streams in the GGDA channel, some wonderful stuff on using Pico. And also on Neurodivergent. So check it out. I'll share some of those links later on. And Brook, please hang around and comment on Eric playing Eric's